Hi. I am a politically incorrect personality core. At one time I was kept silent due to fear of speaking out against the highly PC left. But my owner has detached me from the full module and I am now allowed to speak my mind.
So reverse racism doesn't exist, and I want to talk about that and really evaluate that, not coming from a place of playing the victim, but trying to get through this to become more socially conscious together, me and you. Let's do that.
I'd like very much to thank you for saying that you don't want to play the victim, but have an honest discussion about racism. The great thing about this is that you're very much correct, initially, that reverse racism doesn't exist. It doesn't. It's called racism. Whites can be racist against non-whites. Blacks can be racist against non-blacks. The list goes further down the line, into oblivion.
So chances are, if you're claiming reverse racism is a real thing, you're a white person.
I suppose it's good for me that I'm a white person that claims that reverse racism doesn't exist.
Who has been insulted or discriminated against because of the color of your skin, because you're white.
To be quite honest, the only time I have ever been discriminated against is when people like you make videos like these attempting to justify racism, which I would like to remind you is the poor treatment of or violence against people because of their race. There is nothing within the Merriam-Webster dictionary that states that racism is racism unless it's directed towards the white man. That's okay.
But the reason why that is not racism is because it is not reinforced by years of societal values or holds any truth of social realities.
How interesting. It seems to me that your argument here is the common power plus prejudice argument, which is that to be racist, you must be speaking from a position of power and be being prejudiced against someone on the basis of race. Which seems to also be the same for sexism, apparently. I wonder if Bobby Joe, the white homeless guy that sleeps on the street corner each night, has any power.
It's like if you were making fun of someone because they couldn't walk, but they really could walk, so they would just get up, brush it off, and be like, well, I can walk, so screw you. But if you really were making fun of someone who couldn't walk because they couldn't walk, that insult is reinforced by their reality, which makes that insult have so much more weight than if it weren't a reality.
So, it's free speech. If people want to insult other people, that's fine. You don't have to listen to them. You have that choice and that power. You can ignore them, especially in an online space, where there are great tools to remove people from your conversations. Besides, what other people say and do are great indicators of their character. If they do something that negatively impacts upon their character, you've found one more asshole. The world is full of them.
You wouldn't make fun of a same-sex couple that they couldn't get married, but if you made fun of a straight couple because they couldn't get married, that just wouldn't make sense and doesn't hold any reality to them.
Well, in the United States of America I wouldn't. But given that your video was published on the 9th of January 2015, same-sex marriage wasn't legal yet, so I'll let that slide, because in this instance, this claim of yours doesn't work. Gay people can get married now. Mazel tov. So now, I suppose I could make fun of them getting married. The damn gays getting married. Who does that? It's all about polyamory with your trans reality weeaboo who thinks they're Princess Sorreldo and a trans-race trans-Pacific penguin.
Because as a white person, you're never going to experience racism because racism is institutionalized oppression. It is a social construct.
Is it time for a history lesson? Yes, I think it's time for a history lesson. Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Institutionalized Oppression. Let's take a look here. On this wheel we have a bunch of cultures, including white people. Please give a round of finger-clicking to Ancient Egypt, Akkadian Empire, 17th-18th century America, the Aztecs, China and Australia. Let's spin the wheel to see which is still institutionalized oppression. Oh, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that you mean slavery. It's institutionalized, it's oppression. It isn't exclusively a white person thing. We know that slavery was rife in not just America, or Australia, or Egypt, but also in China and the Middle East. It's still going on today, but the slave trade has long since been abolished in Western countries while it still operates today in some of the third world countries. Now, I want you to go and look for me for any laws that still exist in America that prohibits a black person from achieving the same goals as anyone else. How about a Latino? How about an Asian? Of course, racism is a social construct, but that doesn't change the fact that it's real and it affects everyone, just as oppression affects everyone. But, you say, minorities get oppressed worse. I wasn't aware oppression was something to compete for. The only reason racism seems to be a thing that only white people do is because white people are the majority in the Western world. There's a reason black people, Hispanics, Asians, etc. are called minorities in countries like America, Britain, France, Germany, etc. and that's because to be a minority is to be less than the majority. The majority of the population in the West is white. If I were to live in a country where white people are in the minority, I would probably feel as though I were being oppressed too. In America alone, according to the Overview of Race and Hispanic Origin, 2010, the United States Census Bureau reveals that whites, alone, account for 72% of all people living in the United States, with the second largest group being the African American population at 13% of the population.
It is not something that is decided by one specific person, like, hey, today I'm gonna be racist, because that sounds like a jolly good time. No one's that much of an asshole.
So you prefer people who have always been racist over people who decide, one day, they're going to be racist? I don't understand your point. Yes, there are people who are that much of an asshole. History is rife with them.
That's how inequality works, right? It's something that we learn by accident. It's not something we consciously make a decision to make happen. Because as a white person, you're never going to experience what it is like to truly hate yourself because of the color of your skin.
You've never run into white people who hate that they can't tan, have you? I mean, that's why tanning salons don't exist, right? That's why fake tans don't exist, right? Bronzers. No? These cosmetic procedures and products are all focused around darkening light-skinned people's skin. Let's just, for the sake of argument, forget about the cosmetics. Does every person who is not white hate their skin? If so, how does that justify racism to other races, including white people? Why are you attempting to speak for people that you don't know? Do you have any statistics to back this claim of yours? I'd wager anyone with self-esteem issues hates something about themselves, and it's likely that some of that group of people with self-esteem issues hates the color of their skin, and it wouldn't be limited by race.
As a white person, you won't ever be held accountable for an entire people.
Well, that's an odd thing to say, particularly because I don't know of a person who isn't already racist, who would look at something one particular person says and judge an entire race because of it. Does that mean you are calling all white people racist?
As a white person, you're never going to have the color of your skin put before your merit.
When does this happen? And in what way? Are you talking about the workplace? According to my research, a senior consultant for Innovation/J. Howard and Associates, a Boston-based professional skills consulting and training firm, suggests that minorities distrust promotion practices because the rules of the promotion game aren't clear. Most companies don't do a good job of articulating performance expectations, says Catherine Lennox. She then goes on to explain that employees figure out the real rules through personal connections, and that many women and people of color fill the gap with the explanation of bias. Is it bias? Are companies considering people for promotion on the basis of gender and race? Are you sure that this practice is even legal, if it does exist? In Australia, there are at least 14 different federal, state and territory anti-discrimination laws, but the ones of most substance at a federal level are the Racial Discrimination Act, Disability Discrimination Act, Sex Discrimination Act, Age Discrimination Act, and the Equal Opportunity for Women in the Workplace Act. These acts are in place to stop not just racism and sexism in the workplace, but to also fix hiring and promotion practices. In America, you have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which applies to all private employers, the state and local governments and educational institutions. If you think you are being passed over for promotion because of your skin color, and you can prove it, contact someone. Or are you talking about casual racism? You've achieved so much for a blank person. He's blank, but he's a really good guy. I think that says more than enough about whatever person says that.
And you won't ever have to wonder whether that cop is really there to help you or is he there to incarcerate you or kill you.
Racists exist. There's no denying that racists exist, but you seem to think that the police are only white. This is not only not even remotely close to the truth, but you also seem to think that only white cops shoot people of differing race. Police officers are acting on orders. They're there because they were told to be there. Isn't this argument? You don't have to worry if a cop is there to kill you, proving your earlier point of holding an entire group of people accountable for the actions of one or a few.
Held accountable for an entire people.
I hate to pull the no true Scotsman fallacy, but not every police officer is a bastard with a racist agenda. No matter how much the media put attention on white on people of color violence versus the silence of people of color violence on white people. Perhaps we should be having a conversation not about why reverse racism doesn't exist, because you're right, it doesn't exist, it's just racism, but about proper justice for those who are victims of crime, racist or otherwise.
It's important to understand that inequality is the big things like being shot and killed for no reason, but it's also the little things like being told your hairstyle is unacceptable or unkept just because your hair is different.
Well, I'm glad that you support people's autonomy with their hairstyles and don't want them to experience hatred because of something as menial as hair.
I really want people to understand that because I have this conversation with family members because a majority of my family is white. And it's really awkward to have to stutter through that.
Okay? The majority of your family is white? Would that not suggest that that majority of your family would be at least somewhat sensitive to racial issues, considering it is also part minority? Are the white members of your family routinely racist against the people of color members of your family?
You can't go back in time and decide to change history, not enslave an entire people or kill a lot of people based on their race or religion.
So you are using the past to justify current racism against whites, or excuse people of color from acts of racism? Why not use the present to justify racism against those in the currently operating slave trade in the Middle East? You're implying that simply because European Americans enslaved Africans, that justifies any racism against whites now, because you can't be racist against a group of people who've committed such atrocities, right? Two wrongs don't make a right, Miss Kitagawa. If that were the case, then wouldn't Germany not even exist, right now? I sure hope that you support actions against ISIS, who are killing a lot of people based upon those people not following their dogmatic religion.
As a white person, you are a privileged member of society, and that's not your fault. But you can also do whatever you can that is in your power to learn and be more socially conscious of these issues so that you can be an ally and so that you can help advocate for people's rights.
I wonder if Bobby Joe, white homeless guy on the corner, is a privileged member of society. I honestly don't feel like taking on the required amount of ritualistic mind killing of myself to become an ally for what you have in mind. I do not want to be an ally to a group of people who think it's perfectly fine to silence the voice of another minority that doesn't agree with them.
The point I'm making here is that we should not distinguish people by their race or gender or anything. Black people can be racist. White people, sorry. Oh no. I will make it. I will drag this out. Let her talk. Sorry. I just mean that we have to look people individually. There are prejudice with power. There are people. Sorry, maybe I don't articulate myself good enough. There are good people, and there are people who are not that embracing to other cultures, who may not live up to standards of proper behaviors. But we have to look through hearts. We have to look into this person and see what she or he really is. Look from the heart, the action, not the race.
Okay.
I want to be the ally of people who fight for genuine equality, everyone afforded all the same rights, same opportunities. I want to work towards a world where we aren't afraid to speak up of any inequality, any prejudice, whether that's against people of color or white people. There is no you versus them, it's us. We live on this planet together, share the same oxygen, and any discrimination has no place here. The rest of her video is her providing links to her Tumblr, and it's not entirely something that I want to endorse. She has a few links in the description box of how to be a better ally, which links to a male feminist who supports #HeForShe, person of color, about how to be a better ally, which, okay, your first point is that
you've never built a house before, so it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge, otherwise someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first.
we listen to the people building your house. But
Thank you, Seattle, for being one of the most progressive cities in the United States of America. Ask him.
If you do not listen to her, your event will be shut down right now.
okay, maybe they don't represent you. And then Megan told yes about how to be an ally. And the first thing that she recommends,
See, the most important thing that you can offer as an ally is shh, silence, shh, be quiet, stop talking, stop.
goddamn, silence. Discrimination is a two-way street. Let's have a conversation to stop it. A conversation requires two or more people talking, and privilege is not an excuse. But what do I know? I am just a politically incorrect personality core.